All right, I'll wait for it to pop up here to make sure we can see it, um, because we should be able to see it. If not, um, your camera should probably be catching it, Noah.
I'm from Ohio.
Uh-oh.
Ohio looks good.
Yeah, I spent some time. I was in Cleveland and Cincinnati,
Okay.
and they're sharp.
Okay.
We're gonna see.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let me just pull it up and then we can get started. Good. All right, let me just look. Here we go. So that's how we look, you all.
Okay.
Right. So, welcome everybody to the Holla Black podcast with attorney and Reverend David Hart and myself, the second half of the dynamic duo, Jason Fields. And today we're bringing you and launching our first episode with the esteemed Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings. And I'll let David give you all just the introduction to the doctor. But we want to thank you all for coming on this tremendous election day, which may go down as, I don't know, one of the most influential historic days of our lifetime. And so, with that, Reverend, I'm going to switch and call you Reverend Attorney and all kinds of stuff.
You can call me whatever feels good. All right. Yes. Well, we do have Dr. Ladson Billings here. She literally wrote the book on pedagogy and how to attract black teachers, but also teach them to teach our children. I mean, if there are educators somewhere being educated, she's somewhere being consulted. And so I'll let her tell a little bit more about herself. Let's welcome Dr. Ladson Billings.
Well, thank you both, Dr. Attorney Hart and Jason. I appreciate it. It's really hard to talk about yourself because you just do what you do. But I'll tell you that something happened to me the other day that really made me sort of step back and say, oh my goodness. I just celebrated a birthday on
Happy
Sunday.
birthday.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
And someone gave me a post from the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture and said, I saw you in the interactive exhibit that they had for Mary McLeod Bethune. And I thought, oh my God, I'm that little girl from West Philly. And I'm in the museum. I just got finished actually talking to a group of students at Morgan State on a Zoom before I came in here. And one of the things I said to them is something I say to students everywhere is, make sure you know what your work is.
That's right.
And don't confuse your work
That's right.
with your job.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
We all need jobs because we got to eat, right? And I have been someone who has been blessed to have a job that allowed me to do my work. When I was at the University of Wisconsin, I would tell students, the university could fire me today,
That's right.
but I would still have work because my work is so much better. And my work has always been about what will it take to ensure that black children, in particular, but all children as a consequence, get good education.
Yeah.
That's really all I've been focused on.
Well, Doc, education is on the table. I mean, it is, again, one of the most prolific elections of our time. Before I ask this first question, shout out to our wives, Tasha and Azure, David's wife, Azure, my wife, who allow us to do this kind of stuff. If there was a historical figure you could sit down and have dinner with, who would that be and why?
It's not hard for me to tell you. Fannie Lou Hamer.
That's a good one.
Fannie Lou Hamer has been like an icon in my entire life. I started my teaching career in the school district of Philadelphia, and I used to teach U.S. history. And I was determined I wasn't going to teach the typical chronological age of exploration, colonial period. I start the students with a picture of Fannie Lou Hamer,
All right.
day one. And I asked this question: does democracy work for this woman? Because if it works for her, it works for us all.
That's right.
Right? George Washington did not need democracy.
That's right.
Rich people don't need democracy.
That's right.
That's right.
Because they can have what they want. But here you had a woman, a black woman, a poor black woman, and she's out here fighting for democracy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to sit with her to just hear the stories of her courage, her willingness to put her life on the line, her livelihood. She's a sharecropper, essentially in Mississippi with no rights. She's someone that I first became fully aware of in I think it was 1964 presidential election.
Okay.
And she had been elected to the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
Okay.
And they wouldn't seat her
Yeah, that's
or
right.
her
Yeah.
or their
That's right.
delegation at the convention. The convention was in Atlantic City. Now I live in Philadelphia. I mean, we're talking 60 miles from where I live. Turn on the TV. Many of your listeners won't get this, but it was in black and white. Everything was in black and white. But see this black woman announce to the world, my name is Miss Fannie Lou Hamer from Sunflower County, Mississippi, and I am the duly elected delegate to the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And Lyndon Johnson went berserk. Get that woman off the TV. Get
Right.
her. And all I could think of was, she looks exactly like all the black women I see every Sunday at church. She looks just like the black woman in my neighborhood. She looks like my great Aunt Dolly who lives in Brooklyn. I mean, it gave me chills to see her stand in her power. So I would not hesitate to want to have dinner with Fannie Lou Hamer.
All right. Well, Jason, I want to introduce this. You were our first choice to
Thank
have at
you.
this inaugural episode. We were all together, I think, a few weeks ago at a fundraiser for Kamala Harris, and you had some really insightful things to say. And I want to make sure that our listeners hear this. I mean, it's just there's wisdom in what you said. Maybe let's start by asking, or let's just have a discussion about what's happened over these last 90 days.
Yeah.
Where do you see things, today, between today and 90 days ago? What happened?
Well, I would say what's interesting for me is I had just seen the vice president at a sorority convention before she became the nominee. And here she was saying, here's what the Biden-Harris ticket is standing for. Here's what we've accomplished. Here's what we're fighting against. And it was my second time seeing her at a sorority convention. And what I found really interesting is she's the vice president of the United States, but she still was willing. I mean, because once she comes into the venue, it's no longer ours.
Right.
It belongs to the Secret Service.
Right.
That's right.
But she still understood sorority protocol. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she got on uninterrupted white, all she got on a skirt, we never see her in a skirt, right? I mean, it was like, I'm not going to lay down those traditions.
That's right.
Just because I'm the VP, you guys, we've been in business here 116 years. No, I know the rules.
Yeah.
So I was impressed by that. The other thing that stuck in my mind is when all of the rumbling, because the rumbling about replacing President Biden started well before.
Right.
And I remember hearing Roland Martin saying, y'all can replace Joe Biden if you want to, but you better not skip over
That's right.
Kamala
Exactly.
Harris.
Exactly.
And at that time, people were thinking Gavin Newsom.
Yep.
They were thinking Governor
Everybody.
of Pennsylvania.
That's right.
I mean,
Everybody.
it was going to be a free for all. Is what we were hearing. And Roland Martin, that's like, you're right. We have a vice president. I mean, if anything would happen to Biden, she would indeed be in that place. She's already on
That's
the
right.
ticket. So looking at the convergence and how these things have come together, of course, I was one of the 44,000 women who joined with Jokeda Edie on Win with Black Women. I've been there every Sunday. In fact, the vice president was on Sunday to thank us. The other thing that has so impressed me about what's happened is that Minyan Moore and Leah Daughtry, who were in charge of the convention, must have turned on a dime. Because I am certain that the convention that we saw in Chicago,
Yep.
that wasn't the convention they planned.
No, not at all.
That
did
wasn't
in
what they
10
were
days, yeah.
going to have.
That's right.
And yet it was seamless. It was probably the best Democratic convention I have seen. So I've just been so impressed at how flawlessly
Yeah.
she has executed this campaign. I think she just felt like there's no room for error.
That's right.
And we're not going to make errors.
That's right. Well, and that's really marked her career. I have been an ardent supporter of this woman. I mean, I saw her and I said, there are so many detractors around this woman, but this woman continues to be, completely amazing. And the only other thing that's marked her career, other than haters, is her growth and her rise and her continued ability to meet the occasion.
Yeah.
I want to ask, and I'm gonna turn it I'm gonna turn it to Jason. But do you think Kamala Harris's rise, the vice president's rise, will create a resurgence in Divine Nine organizations?
Good question.
I think initially, because people do that, right? They all of a sudden say, I want to identify with that. I want to be that. I think I think the thing we should look for more than sort of a rise in terms of growth of membership and popularity is really the level of activism that will come out of. Now all three of us are Divine Nine members.
Right, indeed.
We are 501c4 or C7.
Seven.
C7, right? So we have essentially been talking about just get out the vote.
That's right.
That's right.
Or anytime we've spoken on her behalf, we always say, I'm speaking for
That's right.
myself, I'm not
That's
speaking
right.
for the organization.
That's right.
Alpha Kappa Alpha has organized a pack.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
They said we cannot
beautiful.
stand on the sidelines
It's
on this
beautiful.
one.
It's beautiful.
So I think that's something that you will see happen among the current
Agreed.
hope
people.
so.
Not so much the bringing new members in, but I think there'll be a level of political activism
I hope so.
that will start to happen as a result of her candidacy.
I think that, David, to your point about this last 90 days, and I think people, because we've seen it, we forget how impressive it is that as a leader, it all starts with you at the top.
Indeed.
And so when you look at, she's had maybe 100 days to run, as you said,
About
Doc,
97, yeah.
a flawless campaign. I mean, and not only just a flawless campaign, but the amounts in the diversity of the coalition when you start seeing white men for Kamala Harris, white women,
That's right.
Republicans.
That's right.
And one of the things that David and I were discussing on the radio a couple of weeks ago was this idea that what I believe she represents now is we're past policy, just these one issue voters. We move past, hey, you got an issue with abortion. Not, hey, that's your policy issue, I get it. But this is democracy now. This is the fate of where we go as a nation.
Right.
That's right.
And to have someone who, I got to be honest with you, some of the things, and Doc, I want you all to weigh in on this, what what surprised me the most was the reaction from some black folks that it just didn't. I didn't see it coming, right? Just because we can have policy discrepancies, we can have policy debates, but when you move past one issue, or if you hold everybody to the same standard, she's had to be perfect.
That's right.
Going up against someone who consistently is sloppy, offensive, racist, misogynistic. If she were a man, this wouldn't even be a discussion. This would not be we're undecided. About what? What we talking about? How we undecided? And so what was your reaction? Because I was taken back, quite honestly, by some of our brothers and sisters who threw in the she's not qualified or she's not black. And I'm sitting here going, have y'all engaged in intellectual research? Have you looked? What was your reaction?
Well, I'm someone who's always said the black community is not a monolith.
That's right.
Correct.
And we shouldn't feed into that.
Right.
There is a long history of black republicanism that comes after the Civil War.
Right.
It wasn't the Democrats.
Right.
It was Republicans. They were the carpetbaggers. They were the ones who headed south. So someone like Condoleezza Rice, who I actually know, because her dad's a Presbyterian minister. We were in the same Sunday school class together in California. We would argue. We never agreed. We never agreed about stuff. But it was a spirited but not personal debate. At the end of it, he would always say, we good, right? And I would say, Dr. Rice, we good.
That's right.
But Alabama, it's the Dixiecrats that are bombing those little girls. So I understand that allegiance. You also remember that the first senator that we had post-Reconstruction is Edward Brooke. He's a Republican.
That's right.
So the fact that we've become so fractured, and if you're not in my party, then you're a traitor. I mean, that doesn't help us.
That's right.
That doesn't help us. And when you think about the amount of work that has to get done, we're gonna need some people on that other side of the aisle.
Indeed.
So I'm and then I'm also, listen, I'm not going to excuse ignorance either.
Right, that's right.
Some stuff is just ignorant.
That's right.
That's the stuff I'm talking about.
That's all.
Shout out to D.L. Hughley, right?
Right.
Who said I was just repeating that same old stuff. He said, but she sat down with me and said, go look it up. Go see what I've actually done. He said, I need my apology to be as loud as my condemnation.
He did say that.
I can't just, put a tweet out somewhere over here. I need to let the public know
That's right.
I was wrong.
That's right.
So I think a lot of it is just misinformation. And you do also realize that we're in an era where black folks as a voting group are targeted by misinformation. The Russians know where we are. They know how to send us stuff. I just read a piece online before coming over that Michael Jordan said they got fake news out here saying that I'm supporting Donald Trump. That's not true.
Wow.
But it's like, pick somebody who is hugely popular.
That's right. Indeed.
And do that, right?
Indeed. Now, I was telling Jason, I was telling the brother several weeks ago, I said, this move over these 90 days just feels, it feels like it's not natural. It feels supernatural. And I said that this is a move from God, and he was hesitant to get on board with me, but acknowledged that it had some outer worldly pieces. I'm interested to hear what role you believe the Creator had in this.
Oh, that's a very good question.
Okay, so you
I believe this was a divine appointment.
You know my bona fides when it comes to
Praise the Lord.
church. You sitting there with deacon.
Deacon Latson Billings.
You sitting there with a deacon. But one of the things that so excites me about our faith is you're always given clues if you will read
That's right.
deep enough.
That's right.
The
Right.
the hermeneutical tradition is to say, okay, so what does this mean for us right now?
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
And where I was drawn is to in Genesis, where Joseph is sold into slavery.
That's right.
Right? And one of the things I've said, and I know people have objected to me saying this, what's your evidence? As I always say, I always want to think about our purpose here. What are we
right.
even doing
That's
here,
right. That's right.
And I think as a people, as black people, I always say black people were not brought to the United States or to the Americas to slave for America.
That's right.
They were brought here to save America. That's our purpose. So I think again about Joseph. Yeah, they put him in slavery, but his
Right.
whole purpose was, I got to save everybody.
That's right.
In the end, that's what he actually does,
That's what he
right?
did.
And so if you think about your purpose as less about, we're these, downtrodden, oppressed people. Yeah, we experience oppression, but our purpose is so much bigger. We are the moral core
Isn't that the truth?
of this nation.
Isn't that the truth?
We are the moral core. In the face of the most horrible degradation, in the face of the depravity of the nation, in the face of, how you going to say you own somebody? You can't own human beings.
That's right.
But people were saying that. We still maintain a level of dignity that is, to this day, unmatched. It is unmatched. I went to an HBCU. I did it deliberately. My parents were not college educated, so they didn't understand the schools I was turning down. In their mind, she's just going to college, right? I turned down an Ivy League school. I turned down Penn. I'm not going there.
Right.
I'm going to an HBCU.
That's right.
And on the campus of Morgan State, right in the center of the campus, is a statue of Frederick Douglass. And the dignity of Frederick Douglass. It's
Indeed.
like, man, how can you stand up
Indeed.
like this?
Right.
The dignity of a Harriet Tubman.
That's
I mean,
right.
when you begin to just, we've got the luminaries, but I mean, there are people like, Washington, D.C. doesn't exist without Benjamin Banneker, right?
Right. That's right.
You have Robert Smalls. I mean, this whole movement to free ourselves, let's be clear, it's not the Union Army. It's us freeing ourselves.
That's right.
Tells you that, we're a special people. And I'm not saying we're better than other people.
Right.
I'm saying that the nation has never recognized our specialness. It's used
Indeed.
it.
Indeed. Indeed.
I want to ask you both a question, and it piggybacks off of the moral case you were saying, and it was a white gentleman at a labor union, and he was saying, he stood up, he said, for years we've asked black women to save us. America's asked that. Now we're asking black men because of that narrative that not another black people. And he said, the reality is that when are we going to talk to our own people about helping us? And I'm with you on, I do believe that there's a spiritual, the divinely, roadmap here. What do you say to the people who are using that same thing for Donald Trump? How do you, and I don't know if it's can we even have an intellectual discussion?
Well, I mean, if you're saying Christians who are doing this for Donald Trump, I need them to explain to me.
Thank you. Come on now.
Tell me about
That's all
your
I'm trying-
Jesus,
that's all I'm trying to tell
because
you.
none of this lines
That's all
up
I'm trying to tell you.
with the Jesus of the.
That we know. That's all I'm
Now,
trying to tell you.
I want to be clear. Cornel West talks about this actually beautifully, and lots of people like his book Race Matters. I actually like the book Democracy Matters better, because in it he talks about the fact that there are two strands of Christianity. There is one that he calls Constantinian, where the Emperor Constantine essentially realized he couldn't get rid of the religion, so he just co-opted
Co-opted,
it,
that's
and
right.
he sutured it to the state. And And then there is the Christianity of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
I would say that we are up against those Constantinian Christians that want the state, so-called Christian nationalists who want to say it's our way or we're going to kill you. We want to bring back the Crusaders. I mean, and then there are those of us, and black people have always been wedded to the notion that it's about Jesus.
That's right.
That's right.
And Jesus is always going to be aligned with the oppressed.
That's right. Always.
Always. There
James
is
Cone.
no
That's right.
instance where Jesus says, I'm going to go hang out with these rich people.
Isn't that the
I'm going
truth?
to see if
Right.
I can get a tax break here.
Yeah.
I'm going to see. That it's just, it's nothing in the Bible that supports that.
David, to the point, when I've seen people, and I've always questioned, and you and I, we listened to some brothers who wanted to make the argument that they talk about, again, this sort of issues, the abortion and those things. But I've always said, well, if the Jesus that we serve is showing us that the fruits of the Spirit is love and kindness, why don't we see that from this? And let me say this, a disclaimer. I'm cool with Republicans. I know some cool Republicans.
Indeed.
This new batch, I don't know what these people are. These people are not Republicans.
That's right.
What do you say to those folks from a pastor point of view? Like, what about the fruits of the Spirit? Why don't we see any of that in this discussion?
Yeah.
It's always anger.
Yeah, for the 9 years that I've been in the pastorate in Madison, we have been fighting against that element. But I would say right-thinking Christians have been fighting this battle for the better part of 35, 40 years. And it's just that their voices are louder. They can pick pieces, proof text, pieces out of the scriptures because they have a philosophy, they have a theology, they have a way of thinking. They want it to be true, and you can pull things out of the scriptures and support. Have this to support your theory, your theology, but a holistic, a real, thorough reading of the scriptures says that Jesus was somebody that contradicts every single premise that they start with. Immigration policy, or fair housing, or abortion, or queer rights and so forth. It just necessarily contradicts. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all of that. Jesus Christ believed in the collective. I mean, he really was, a socialist in many respects. And so I suppose what I would say to them is, the same thing we say every single day that we fight is their understanding of the scriptures just doesn't align with what's actually there.
Right. And it's not just, 35 or 40 years. The very institution of slavery is undergirded by a particular theology. Right?
Very true.
So
Very
it
true.
starts back there. But I would say, if you looked in the midst of the civil rights movement, I mean, who is Dr. King aiming his most poignant and sharpest message to are Christians, are ministers. I always, I have a friend who said if we could expand the Bible, the book we'd put in there would be the letter from Birmingham jail, right? If Paul could write to the Corinthians and Ephesians, that letter needs to be in there.
That's right. Amen.
So, I mean, you have a Bull Connor
That's right.
who is turning fire hoses
That's right.
and dogs on our children,
And going to church.
and he's a Sunday school
That's right.
teacher.
And going to church.
He's a Sunday school.
That's right.
So they don't see a contradiction. The only rationale that I could give for why they would support Donald Trump is that he is the Babylonian king, right? That God essentially says to the children of Israel, I'm going to use somebody against you to get you straight. But they cannot make a case for him as a Christian
Not at all.
in any way. He's not even a good person. Let's just start there.
That's so true. This is a man who said out of his mouth that he does not believe that he has the need for salvation.
Yeah,
to even
to ask
ask
for
God
forgiveness.
I mean
Yeah.
that there's no greater tenet in Christian. I mean, that is what distinguishes us from every other monotheistic religion. Is our belief that the salvific grace of God necessarily causing us to always ask for forgiveness.
What's at stake for? First, I'm gonna come back to that question. How do you think we're gonna do? And I say we, like we all. It's a coalition. How we gonna do, y'all?
We're working their tails off.
Listen, we on this ship together.
How we gonna do?
We've been working our tails off.
So we gonna come out with doctor?
Please.
I'm leaning on Reverend Hart. I'm driving over here. I kept saying, "Be anxious for nothing,"
Lord.
and just but everything, a prayer and supplication.
right.
I mean,
That's right.
but I heard a wonderful, wonderful sermon on Sunday. A pastor I follow out of Alexandria, Virginia, Howard John Wesley. Dr. Wesley said, God's will does not necessarily interrupt your bad choices. Right?
That's right.
So, yeah, God's will may indeed be that I want her in this place.
Right.
But we can still make bad choices. And we've seen it over and I mean, again, the Bible gives you examples. God did not say, I will for you guys to have a king.
Indeed.
Right?
Right.
Indeed.
But did the people say, no, we want a king.
We want a
That's
king.
right.
And we're going to have
That's
a
true.
king.
That's
Okay?
true.
So I think it's important for us to not overstate what it is that God, the work of God in this. I teach Vacation Bible School, every adult class for Mount Zion every summer. And one of the things I've been trying to get people to understand is that our faith is formed by more than one thing. It is formed by the scriptures. It is formed by our theology. It is formed by logic. It is formed by tradition. And it's formed by our experiences. And those things don't stay static.
That's right.
So somebody who is sola scripturis, it's in the Bible. If it ain't in the Bible, I ain't
Right.
doing it. I'm not there. Here's what I know has changed about me as a Christian. My view of God, my theology has exploded over the last 20
Praise the
years.
Lord.
I have stopped having God in a box that he does this thing on this day in this way. Mostly I'm saying, God, I have no idea what you're doing, but just let me be a part of
That's
it,
right.
right?
That's right.
That I have to believe that my God, because if the Bible is the only thing, if your view of God is just the Bible, then the Bible's your God. And I know that I'm serving a God that is much bigger than 66 books in the Bible. It's an instruction manual. It's there to help. But, and then the other thing I get in trouble with is that I have less and less faith in tradition. Because you know how we get. Oh, you got to wear this. Oh, you got to do that. And I feel like we're losing so many people by holding. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for tradition.
Right.
And I think, again, as we look into this election season, we're probably going to see some untraditional stuff happen.
Praise. Yeah. I agree.
And that's going to be a good thing.
I agree. Doc, you are breaking down the Wesleyan quadrilateral,
Yes, the Wesleyan quadrilateral.
like a professor, like a theology
I
professor.
do what I do.
Indeed,
I'm
indeed.
looking at her like, I see why she won all
That's
those
right. That's
awards.
what I'm trying to tell you. I have seminary professors who can't break it down this way, so I'm so appreciative and love
I
this.
see why
discussion.
she world-renowned.
Indeed. And if she's not careful, we might have to bring her back in.
Oh, listen, I'm already
she might be our
looking at
third
dates.
host. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Yes, indeed. I'm getting texts, folks saying, why is that not your third host? Right now, I'm getting texts.
Listen, I'm retired, y'all. I don't need another
I
job.
got time to bring her back. Bring her out of retirement.
Right.
What's at
Yes, sir.
stake, attorney? What's at stake? For
Well,
this election?
I think everything's at stake. I mean, there's no question. This man, I just preached this sermon that it was, where you put your heart in Judges 16 with Samson and Delilah. Delilah never lied to that man and said that she was going to be Jewish or said that she was going to do this and loved him. Or she said, I'm here for my people. I'm here to extract secrets from you. I'm going to be a dictator on day one. You hear me? and right, nice. right. And her team was saying, no, she didn't mean that. No, she said, that's exactly what I mean.
Right.
And we're facing that exact thing here. This man has told us I'm going to get even with my people, with my enemies. I'm a pardon everybody. I'm gonna do everything that I'm gonna settle all the scores. And his team is saying, no, he didn't mean. And then he comes back 2 and 3 times and says, that's exactly what I meant. Yeah. And then they finally just say, I just don't care. And so I think everything for us is on the line. We're protecting Black womanhood from my perspective. With this, just the way the undignified approach that they're calling her, everything but a child. I mean, just sexually lewd things. I mean, for me, I have broken down into tears. And I mean, my wife is like, you know how my wife thinks about me and Kamala Harris. I mean, because I feel like she personifies Black womanhood right now. I mean, the way that they do her is the way that they do all. That's what I'm. So it's everything is at stake.
And I told you off air. I was talking to my wife and either yesterday or today, and I said, I apologized to my wife. I said, I'm sorry, because I had not really seen the misogyny and the blatant disrespect of just Black women, period.
That's right.
That it was, if you willing to disrespect one at the highest level like that, then I know you don't care about the rest of them.
That's right.
And so it opened my eyes to, oh my Lord, how did it, and I think you mentioned it off air, Doc, but it was just the whole system. And it just was an eye-opener to me that people could feel so comfortable to disrespect a woman like that. And while I may feel certain ways, I think the narrative, Democrats, and as a Democrat, I think we don't always control the narrative the best way, that I'm not necessarily saying people should go out and have abortions. What I'm not going to do is tell a woman what she should be doing with her body. As a man, I think that's between her, God, and whoever else. It ain't up to me to be forcing people to do certain stuff. And it's just it is really just a chauvinistic view of how this system is.
But you realize that this man is an equal opportunity abuser.
No doubt about it.
Barack Obama lives rent-free in Donald Trump's head. He cannot stand the fact that he made it to the presidency before him, all the questioning of his legitimacy. I also feel like Michelle Obama reined herself in through the presidency because that narrative was out there, the angry Black woman. So here Kamala's coming with race, with the gender, with the class, and he is just, he has no regard.
Not at all.
For anyone. I mean, not even his own family. Let's be clear. So why would we think he would treat her with any level? The thing that is more concerning to me is the degree to which we have a nation, half of the nation at least almost, who has bought this. Who this speaks to them.
Now, what's the ramifications of getting rid of the Department of Public Instruction or the Department of Education?
Well, you realize that education is one of those things that doesn't show up in our Constitution. It is very unusual for a highly developed technological society to not have a centralized education, a minister of education. So the Department of Education is this way to kind of even out the playing field. So the Title I, which is a part of the Education and Secondary Education Act, Lyndon Johnson signed in the 60s, the Higher Education Act, the whole point of the land grant colleges, then adding on the HBCU land grants, all of that resides in the Department of Education. The Project 2025,
What you say? He knows
chapter.
nothing about it.
yeah, that chapter on education is all about dismantling public education, not just dismantling the department, but public education. It is it's the blueprint that Milton Friedman, the economist, laid out
from Chicago.
from the 50s and said we shouldn't have public education. You should just give the money to the families and let them purchase education. Well, you know who's not going to be in any position to purchase it, nothing high quality.
Right.
And indeed, they're getting rid of the department is to then send the money to the states and then let the states make a decision. So this not only puts our children in jeopardy, it puts anybody who has a child with a special need.
That's right.
Because it is the federal government that mandates you got to take care of these special needs kids. It's the IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act, that allowed them to even come to school. So all of this is happening. Now, about not quite 20 years ago, I made a statement that everybody said I was being hyperbolic, I was being alarmist. And I said, 20 years ago, the larger agenda is the destruction of public education. Oh, no, we'll never get rid of public. I said, you've gotten rid of a decent public transportation, public health, public housing. Why you think public education is going to be the one domino that will stand?
That's right.
And what makes it so dangerous is this is the mechanism for promoting and sustaining a democracy. I have a slide in one of my presentations that has a picture of Thomas Jefferson, and I said, I know some of y'all are surprised to see me have Thomas Jefferson. I call Thomas Jefferson the colonial period shaft. He's a complicated man. No one understands him but his woman, right? But he has a statement that in a letter he wrote to James Madison in 1787, that says, I hope that the education of the common people will be attended to, so that we may be able to depend on them for some due degree of liberty. I said, now that doesn't sound radical. That sounds like stuff people talk about in the 1700s. I said, here's the radical notion of it. In 1787, there were no public schools.
Right.
And nobody cared about educating the common people. The only people who got education in 1787 were the wealthy, the aristocrats. They sent their kids to Europe. They may have sent them to New England. But if you were a common person, you're going to be what your daddy is. If your daddy is a farmer, you're going to be a farmer. If your daddy is a blacksmith, you're going to be a blacksmith. Maybe it's 4 or 5 of y'all in the farm family, and your dad going to send one of y'all down to the blacksmith to apprentice. But there's no system of public education. And yet, Jefferson understood this is the only way we're going to keep this democracy going, y'all. We got to have a system that gets to common people so they will be invested in it. So getting rid of the Department of Public Education is really saying we really want to destroy public education because we don't want to have it anyway.
David, do you as a person you've seen the ramifications legally from education to spirituality, why do you, to your credit, you formed Wisconsin's the only Black political action committee here. What was the impetus around forming that? And then what do we need to do as a people to change our mindset as far as, I've always said, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. You both have made a good effort to be at the table. What do we need to do for us to understand that those are the moves we need to make?
Sure. The Black Political Action Committee was started because, just simply put, we in Dane County, there were issues that needed to be responded to, but we need to recruit, train, equip Black folk to represent us. I think Dane County is above. I think it's above the curve in Wisconsin in terms of Black elected officials.
Right.
I just think that's the impetus, is we have to continue to raise money for, train, recruit, and equip Black leaders. I think, I think that the task is, I mean, right now we have a Black woman on the top of the ballot, and some of this is ceremonial and some of it's symbolic, but a lot of this is not. I mean, this really gets to the core of how we need to continue thinking about our community. We need we need some a measure of unity. We need we need a measure of of just thinking about ourselves in a way that we can continue to be overcomers, but but we don't have to glorify struggle. We can glorify progress and prosperity and all of those economic well-being and all of those things. So that's what it means.
And you have to recognize that Win with Black Women didn't just start.
That's right.
90 days ago.
Right.
They started when she was first on the ticket.
That's right.
As the VP.
That's right.
And said we've got to strategize, organize, and mobilize to make sure. But they are the successors to a group called the Colored Girls. Mignon Moore, Bishop Leah Daltrey, Donna Brazile. It's about 5 or 6 of them who have been. They see their inheritance coming from Shirley Chisholm. That this is the first real effort.
That's right.
To have a role to play in the body politic. I would also say that the reason that Blacks for Political and Social Action has to exist is because our traditional civil rights arms can't do some of this stuff. They 501c3s.
Yeah.
I would not. I sit on the board of the Urban League, and I know how hard Ruben has worked to get the business and the housing and all of that stuff. I'm friends with Greg Jones. I know what it is that the NAACP, the hierarchy and the structure of the NAACP is certain things you can do and can't do. So we actually had no vehicle for, not just supporting, but funding and advocating from a policy position. And the larger community counts on the fact that we don't have that.
That's right.
To your point, Doc, one of the things we were talking about, and it was this, I made a reference or statement that it was said that America, we've always asked Black women to help us. Black women help Joe Biden get, and Black seniors help Joe Biden get. And now it's this narrative, false narrative, which I think I almost fell into, that Black men are just fleeing from the VP, when that's not true. How is it that we're always put in these positions where we start debating over which white person is best for us?
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you that I actually put a social media post up when this stuff started bubbling, and I said, why are y'all worried about the 15% of the Black men that you think are not going to vote for her? And you haven't said a word about the 53% of white women that we worried about. I mean, you're asking the Black men to vote their race, but you're not asking white women to vote their gender? I mean, come on. There's not a hierarchy of oppression here. Oppression is oppression.
That's right.
So I think it's interesting that we, quote, allow ourselves to be placed in this box. And I actually saw someone the other day on MSNBC, and he says, I'm not taking debate on this.
Yeah.
He said, this is a non-issue. That the majority of Black men are going to support her and vote.
David, where do we need to go, I think, as a community? God willing, right? She win. We all know that's just the start. That's level one.
That's right.
What do we need to be doing as a community and as people to make sure, one, we honestly hold her accountable for the stuff that she says, but more importantly, we help be a part of those solutions.
That's right. Well, that's why we're here. That's why we're on this podcast, so that we can continue to help her when she becomes president. But I'd prefer Dr. Latson Billings to articulate this, because just the way that she expressed it when I heard her is masterful.
Now I got to remember what it said. So
Indeed.
if I don't get it, you'll probably. But I remember the jubilation in 2008
That's
when
right.
Barack
Yeah.
Obama.
Yeah.
That's right.
People asked me to come to watch parties, and I said no. I insisted on being home by myself, partly because it just made me think that my parents had gone on and how much work they had done. And I just wanted that moment alone. I literally went, after it was announced that he was projected, when I went in upstairs in my closet and just wept. Because I just couldn't, in some ways I couldn't believe it. And so it's funny because I had a class to teach the next day, and the students were bouncing off the wall. They were so excited. And they said, Dr. Lesson-Boone, you don't seem all that excited. I said, I was a critical race theorist before
That's right.
the man got elected.
That's right.
And I'm still a critical race. And I can tell you from a critical race theory perspective why he won. This is what's called an interest convergence. A lot of those white folks looked at their 401ks.
right.
They looked at their stocks and what have you and said, you know what? I can't keep doing this.
Right.
And so their interests, their pocketbook interests, converged with our interests to have this man be president. What had bothered me is that we were just happy about him being president. We were all there for the celebration. We went to inaugurations and all that kind of stuff. But we did not roll up our sleeves and fully work.
That's right.
Yeah.
That Tea Party formed within a month,
Quick.
right?
Quick.
Before he got off,
Yeah.
the
Quick.
podium, he took that oath, and I remember hearing them say they literally said, "We hope he fails."
Yeah, no,
I remember that.
yeah. So the question for me is, what's the mobilization effort? Do all these coalitions that we have formed to get her to this point, do they fall apart, or do we stay intact? Do we say, Madam President, what do you need from us? Who do we need to be talking to? What kind of coalition building do we need to continue with? There's more work for us to do
Right.
if she wins.
Was it fair that to your point, we as a community didn't do some work? We left the president out there. Is it fair that some people are like, well, what did he do for black people when we didn't really help? And do we run the risk, if I'm hearing you correctly, do we run the risk of doing the same thing if she wins?
That's my fear.
Yeah.
That's my fear. And, he benefited from the pride that we had. That he's replaced John F. Kennedy. You got the triumph. You got Jesus, John F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. I was like, okay, Kennedy, you're gonna have to move up because I gotta get Barack up here
That's right.
somewhere, right?
That's
I can't have but three.
That's right. That's right.
That's a Christian thing,
That's
right?
right.
You gotta
That's
have
right.
three, but it can't. So, in some ways, we elevated him, and we were so proud, and it let us speak to our children in a particular way, but we never asked the question, okay, what is it we should and could be doing? They continued to try to represent us. I mean, they'll tell you the White House was different in ways that nobody ever did. When they would have these concerts and all this stuff, they always reached back into our community to showcase it. But I'm not sure we like sort of rolled up sleeves and said, okay, well, there's still work to be done on the ground to make sure that our people understand, what the task is. That is my fear. Should she be elected, that we abandon her, and I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, the one advantage she has is she is a D9 member.
Right.
Indeed.
So she got 2.1 million people
right.
who ought to be working.
Right.
Right.
We talk about D9 and the involvement that you think you'll see more involvement coming from a lot of us, a lot of our members. Shouldn't we have been doing this a long time ago?
Well, You know, it's a funny thing. I don't know how many of I don't know whether you guys know Mark Lamont Hill.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Mark,
He's a kid.
I was Mark's mentor from North Philly. We're still good friends. We talk time to time. So Mark came out to Wisconsin to give a talk, and one of the things he said that just stuck with me. He said, he says, I'm on campuses all across this nation, and there are 50 black students on a campus, but there's 25 groups. You know, everybody president or vice president or something. He said, we have got to go back to our traditional groups and hold their feet to the fire. If you don't like what the NAACP is doing, pull out the charter, because the charter is probably not what they're doing. You don't like what the Urban League is doing, go get the charter. And let's try to build these organizations. So if we pull our charters, and we all got them, it ain't nothing about stepping in them charters.
Right.
Isn't that the truth?
Ain't
Right.
nothing about wearing more paraphernalia. And I should talk, right? But I mean, but we've majored in the minors on
That's
this
right.
thing. You go back and see what your organization was founded on and what it intended to do, and
right.
make a recommitment to the people who, listen, these people put themselves on the line
Yes,
to
they
do
did.
this.
Yeah.
There were less than 1,000 black people in college when Alpha Kappa Alpha was founded. In college anywhere. So here are these courageous people saying it's got to be more than this. When Delta Sigma Theta got out there and marched for suffrage, black women still couldn't vote.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So we have that tradition, and I'm not sure we're passing that part of the work along, to have people understand we've always been change makers. You know, one of the things that was exciting for me is when Glenda Glover was our international president, where she really showed the world, oh, we can raise money for these HBCUs. 4 years in a row, she raised over $1 million in a day. That's something that we did. Every single HBCU has been endowed because of Alpha Kappa Alpha. We have that. We have the purchasing power. We have political power. We have intellectual power. And I just feel like we're not using it. We are allowing our children to just die on the vine here.
You know, Doc, I want to give you the last word, if that's
Absolutely.
3 minutes. And the work you've done in around education and reaching black kids, and I think you hinted towards it. I would love to go out on solutions just from your research and the things you've done. What do we need to do to turn that corner and reach black kids and give them those things that you said we're not giving them?
Well, let me take the big picture here, because there are two promises that America has made to us that they have not fulfilled. The first promise came as a result of the Brown decision. They said that they would desegregate the schools because they knew that that would help equalize the funding, right? And the second thing they said they would do is to equalize funding, the Serrano v. Priest decision in California. We have never done those two things. And until we do those two things, much of the stuff that we do underneath that is, you know, it's like, you know, you got that leak in your house, you know you really need a plumber, but you keep wrapping that tape around it. Much of the work that I've been doing is trying to wrap the tape around it. There's a macro issue of school desegregation and school funding that have to be attended to. Now, in the meantime, we still got to teach our kids. And so we do need more teachers that look like our kids. We have pretty good research evidence that suggests if a black boy has a black teacher, by the time he is in 5th grade, he is much more likely to go to college. Can you imagine that? One teacher, not even all of them, right?
Just one.
So we know that we have to be able to have a more robust teaching force that includes us. Oh, and not only does a black boy stand a better chance of going to college, all children benefit. Black and white children benefit if they have a black teacher. So we know something about teaching. We always have. So that's the part of the field that I've decided to till, is to try to figure out how we get more teachers who know what to do with our children. I just feel like democracy's best hope is education.
Indeed. Indeed it is.
Well, Doc, thank you for being a guest on our first inaugural episode.
My pleasure.
Attorney, Reverend,
Indeed.
you want to take us out, man?
Whew. Well, I actually just want to ask what you think is going to happen tonight.
I
Both
think
of
she's gonna win. I think she'll win. I don't listen to the polls, but something about her ground game gives me confidence that outside of the radio, the TV, and all those things, you got to get out there, knocking on doors and meeting people. And so because of that, I think she'll be victorious.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yep.
I think that one of the difference makers is going to be all of these disaffected Republicans. They're not saying anything. It's the George Bushes of the world.
That's right.
They're not saying anything.
That's right.
But they are not going. They not only is they not going to vote for him.
That's right.
They are going to vote for her.
That's right.
Because they know that another presidency with him is going to be disastrous for everybody. You know.
And I think the same way that the polls miscalculated the numbers for him in 2016, they're doing the same thing in 2024 for Kamala Harris for that exact same reason, that there are reasonable moderates and conservative people who are decent folk who don't want anything to do with him, but they can't, some of them can't jump out and say, I know former elected officials right here in Wisconsin, they're tired of this man, but they can't say, they can't say that. They're gonna jump out and vote for him. So I agree with you all. We gonna get it tonight.
Well, you've all been watching live the first inaugural episode of the Holla Black podcast with Attorney Reverend David Hart and little old Jason Fields, and our special guest, the one, the only, Dr. Gloria Latson Billing. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
Partner, I'll see you next time. You all continue to subscribe and join us on Facebook and YouTube. We'll talk to y'all later.